boleh tengok.
Okay. Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 15th International Malaysian Educational Technology Convention, IMETC 2021. I'm Fazli Ishaq, Assistant Director of ICT Unit Learning Sector at Johor State Education Department, and I'll be the moderator for this forum today. As you are aware, the COVID-19 has resulted in closure of schools all across the world. Globally, over 1.2 billion children are out of the classroom. As a result, education has changed dramatically. With this significant rise of e-learning, where teaching is undertaken remotely and on a digital platform, with this sudden shift away from the physical classroom in many parts of the globe, some are wondering whether the adoption of online learning will continue to persist post-pandemic and how such a shift will impact the worldwide education market. Today, we would like to highlight a topic that is quite interesting to be discussed on, which is digitalization of education amidst COVID-19 pandemic, the way forward. So I'm sure that everyone has their very own experience and everyone have their own thoughts to share. So before we proceed today, I would like to introduce our panelists today. Okay, so our first panelist is Mr. Shahrizal Haji Imran, the Assistant Director of Education Technology Center, Ministry of Education in Brunei, Darussalam. How have you been, sir?
Hi, Assalamualaikum and good morning. I'm okay. Hope the rest of you are okay as well.
Okay, next, we have Dr. Lila P. Ariola, the current Director for of Bureau of Learning Delivery of the Department of Education in Philippines. Good morning, Doctor. How are you today?
Hello, good morning. Good morning to everybody. It's an honor to be with you all. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and our third panelist is all the way from South Korea. We have an experienced English teacher from Gyumho Jung Ang Girls High School. So I'm sorry if I pronounce it badly.
No, it's
Okay.
okay.
Okay, lovely to have you with us, Miss Jiang. How are you today?
I'm good. It's an honor. I'm so honored.
Okay, and finally, we have Puan Fazliatun Zainuddin, the Principal Assistant Director of the Policy Planning and Coordination Unit at the Educational Technology and Resources, Ministry of Education Malaysia. How have you been, Puan?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here and feel so honored to be among of the other international panelists. Thank you.
Okay, so we have met with our four panelists for today. Okay, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed large inequalities in access to technology, such as between the rich and poor, rural and urban areas, girls and boys, across and within countries. This relates to what I was saying earlier. Online platforms have often been the first to be rolled out to enable children to continue learning from home. Indeed, they are generally the most effective learning modality in getting some form of learning up and running. However, they have the lowest reach. In some countries, online platforms reach less than 10% of the population. This because they require electricity, and we also need the reliable internet connectivity as well as sufficient devices for children in the household, particularly devices with good functionality and capabilities and large enough screen size. Okay, all right, Mr. Shahrizal Haji Imran, can you share with us what are the strategies implemented in Brunei Darussalam during the COVID-19 pandemic in ensuring continued learning? Over to you, Mr. Shahrizal.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good morning again to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you to all of you for inviting me to share Brunei's experience in terms of to ensure continuity of learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. And since last year, experienced that there's abrupt changes in the way we do or deliver education. Our schools were closed virtually overnight. We have to bring in the school holidays early, and immediately students went online. And our schools were closed for almost 2 months before things went back to normal, according to our de-escalation plan. Fast forward to today, it was last year. Today, Brunei is experiencing its second wave of COVID-19, and commencing from the 7th of August, few weeks back, with a single case, the government decided to control the movement of its people through restriction of movement, and that includes schools. So schools are currently closed, even as we are speaking at the moment. And for the last 2 months, online learning is very much a center of teaching and learning delivery, and I believe it will be our new normal. And I also believe it is here to stay. And classes are carried out virtually online through Microsoft Teams, Google Learning platforms, and even social media applications. So home learning packs are also provided to our students to support their learning for those that has connectivity and devices issues at home. Um, Apart from leveraging on online technologies, efforts were being done to provide students with low-tech kind of resources, such as recording of TV. So our curriculum department has worked with several teachers to produce some educational videos, and working with our national TV broadcasting station here to broadcast those video to their home, so that the students can watch those learning content and resources on their TV. And this low-tech approach, coupled with the home learning packs provided to them, has helped them a lot in terms of reducing the equity or learning gaps because of the pandemic. And for those who have access to technology at home, these videos are also made available as a video on demand on the broadcasting station websites, as well as on their learning mobile apps. To further support our teachers in terms of this situation, we provide a series of webinars and continue to provide webinar in the future as an offline kind of training by our Teachers Academy. And the objective of this webinar is to assist our teachers in adopting existing tools and new tools to deliver the online learning and feel more confident in delivering their digital learning. Yeah, thank you. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharizal. Great initiative taken by the Brunei government. Now, how about the Philippines, Dr. Ariola?
Yeah, thank you very much. And may I also be allowed to share my screen?
Okay, sure.
Okay. So, again, thank you very much for making me part of this webinar. With the nationwide lockdown declared in the country because of the COVID-19 pandemic, our schools remain physically closed for face-to-face learning until today, as the health and safety of our learners and that of our teachers and all those involved in the delivery of learning has been the utmost priority of the Department of Education and the government in general. But despite having our schools physically closed, the Department of Education, through our beloved Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones, ensured continuity of learning. And so a basic education learning continuity plan was developed with our stakeholders. And this basic education learning continuity plan actually lays down our education interventions to address concerns, particularly brought about by COVID-19. So, and this basic education learning continuity plan was also contextualized by our schools. The BELCP, in short for the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan, streamlines the K to 12 curriculum into the most essential learning competencies, and these are actually delivered in different learning delivery modalities. so that in deciding particularly the learning delivery modalities that are supposed to be implemented, we needed to consider the context of the learner as well as the school in terms of access. So how do we ensure that no one is left behind, and that we have to consider what the have-nots can afford in terms of digital resources. We look into their conditions and situations, risk levels in their areas, and that of their economic status, readiness for the transition to the implementation of the new learning delivery modalities, in terms of availability of resources, in terms of readiness of our learners for independent learning, in terms of readiness of our teachers also on the use of the different learning resources and technologies, as well as our parents. And of course, availability of learning resources for the different learning delivery modalities. So for us in the Philippines, until today, since last year, we are implementing pure distance learning with the following subcategories. We have the modular distance learning, online distance learning, educational television, and radio-based instruction. So you will note that whatever is the context of the child, then there would always be a learning delivery modality ready for them. So the pandemic has consistently rendered the face-to-face learning delivery modality highly improbable for now, especially though our schools coming from the moderate to low risk have actually hopes to have high hopes to have the blended learning. So we're going to have the limited face to face. In fact, we were already able to select 59 pilot schools, and hopefully it's going to start this November. And we're also hopeful that this is going to be expanded in most areas. Nevertheless, as we have said, for now, there's no way to deliver learning if not through distance and remote learning. And we ensure that our learners can still master the required learning competencies even within the confines of their homes, with, of course, the instructional support of all teachers and learning facilitators, including parents and some community stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Wow, that's an impressive job done. Okay, now we move further. Okay, we move to the South Korea. Okay, Miss Jiang, can you share with us what are the strategies implemented in South Korea?
Yeah, but before that, I have to tell you that I apologize. I apologize that you have to look at my face, look at my plain face instead of a splendid slide. Okay, and here is my story. I think our government was pretty quick at this kind of COVID situation. The first thing they did was the Ministry of Education was prepared and distribute the guideline for distance learning. And then they formed 10,000 community to help teachers to solve the obstacles that may arise related to distance learning. And then they also distribute practice rules that the teachers and students should follow regarding distance learning. So about distance learning can be a real-time interactive learning or content-based learning or task-based learning, whatever. And I want to explain about two main systems in Korea, which is EBS. EBS means Educational Broadcasting System, and the second one is the CARIS. Okay, the first one about the Education Broadcasting System, they doubled the number of servers of EBS online classes so that 3 million students could simultaneously access the distance learning. So EBS online class is kind of a learning management system that allows teachers to organize lectures through EBS contents. And also CARIS, CARIS means Korean Educational Research Information System, and they also have so much wonderful systems. So they expanded its online learning services by providing learning materials tailored to the curriculum. But I want to tell you one thing. We have many different types of platforms so that the teachers can use. So the variety itself is good, but the students sometimes can be confused. Like for example, the Korean language teacher, he loves, what can I say, the EBS online class that I explained to earlier. But the English teacher, like me, they love the Zoom systems, and the other teachers also prefer platform made by their own area. So I mean, sometimes the variety is good, but sometimes variety itself makes the student very confused. And the last one that I want to mention is that the real-time classes, the teachers must know how to manage it. So the education office provides many different types of teachers training courses so that they can be easily accustomed to the new system. Yeah, this is all.
Wow, that's a great initiative by South Korean government. Okay, now we move back to our country, which is Malaysia. How about the situation in Malaysia, Puan Fazilatun? Okay, so can you share with us?
Thank you, Encik Fazli. Uh, Personally, I feel that Malaysia, the MOE of Malaysia has done a lot to help teachers and students to cope with the pandemic COVID-19. We have so many initiatives given by so many of our divisions. So we work together and collaborate with each other in order to help the teachers, the students, and the schools. Okay, let me share with you my slides. I can't tell you all, but I selected a few which I believe important to us. First of all, what we did was we established guidelines on home-based learning, which we give guidance to teachers on how to conduct teaching and learning from home. Actually, the Ministry of Education suggests three types of approach to do, which is online learning, offline learning, and also off-site learning. But most of the time, we will focus on the two things, the online and also the offline. And then in this manual also, we also have guidance for parents on how to assist their children and give support to them in handling the online and also offline home-based learning. Then we also have a great digital learning platform, which is called Delima, Digital Educational Learning Initiative Malaysia, which we have three technology giants, Google, Microsoft, and also Apple, working together on a single platform to give contents, applications, services, which can be used by students and teachers for their teaching and learning. So we started this platform since July 2019. And then it has been adopted by a lot of teachers. Currently, we have like almost all of the teachers have logged in Delima, and like 80% of them have used Delima actively, meaning that they use actively for 7 days a week. Whereas on our students' part, even though we knew that there are some problems for students not having proper devices, but still we managed to get roughly like 80% of the students and also like 50% of the students actively using Delima. So all of the online learning for the students are put together in here. The teachers can use, for example, applications like Google Classroom and also other applications and also services provided by our Google Workspace in education to help them with the learning. Since August 2021, we managed to upgrade our Delima. So right now we call it as Delima 2.0. We have new features so that teachers and students can have more ability to upgrade their learning. So we want students to have fun learning and also self-determined learning. And then we also have educational TV. Before this, we have stopped having terrestrial TV, but then when COVID starts, we were thinking how to assist students without devices, especially those without internet connection, and also those in the remote areas. So we found out from our statistics that 98% of the households have TV sets. So this is one way of having uh, educational resources access to some parts of our countries. And we started with our national TV, which is RTM, and then we have help from ASTRO. And then we also have now a dedicated TV station, which is called Didik TV, KPM, where we focus on giving assistance to students by having curriculum on uh, the syllabus. And other than that, we also have a digital platform, which is EduWeb TV. And then to help students with gadget, we also have Cerdik initiative, which we provide devices for children in low income categories. Currently, we are giving out 150,000 laptops to the students, and this is assisted by our PTAs and also our members of parliament in order to give more laptops to the students for them to have online classes. To cope with the school closure, our Ministry of Education also have a catch-up plan, which is called KPM Perkasaku, which is to complete the whole syllabus, including syllabus left behind due to school closure. So there are several levels where what kind of curriculum which is a must for the students to go through and so on. And last but not least, the Ministry of Education, headed by the Educational Technology and Resources Division, currently we have a pilot project which is called Virtual Open Classroom, which tries to strengthen teachers' digital competencies by integrating technology in their teaching and learning. And right now we are focusing on how to do classroom assessment. So by using technology, so what we do is we record the teachers teaching in real classroom, and then we have reflection sessions for teachers to uh, enhance their teaching capabilities. So these are six of the so many initiatives that we do in Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Puan Fazliatun. Okay, so we have heard about the initiative have been taken by four government and from four different countries, which is from Malaysia, Philippines, Brunei, and South Korea. Dear fellow educators, some students without reliable internet access or technology struggle to uh, uh, to participate in digital learning. This gap is seen across countries and between income brackets within countries. So, according to OECD data, whilst 95% of students in Switzerland, Norway, and Austria have a computer to use for their schoolwork, only 34%, yes, you heard me right, 34% in Indonesia do. So in the US, there is a significant gap between those from the privileged and disadvantaged background. Whilst virtually all 15 years old from a privileged background said they had a computer to work on, nearly 25% of those from disadvantaged background did not. While some schools and governments have been providing digital equipment to students in needs, such as in the New South Wales or Australia, many are still concerned that the pandemic will widen the digital divide. So, how do we deal with students without gadgets and connectivity? Okay, so we will start the second question with Dr. Lila.
Okay, thank you very much again. May I please share my screen?
Okay, sure.
Okay. So for us in the Philippines, particularly the Department of Education, it's really been a challenge for us because our statistics show that we have the greatest percentage of our learners are those with no access to gadgets and that of connectivity. That's why they cannot really get into online distance learning. But I'd like to mention that even pre-pandemic, we already started developing some self-learning modules already, and we call them alternative delivery mode modules. And this was intended actually for learners who would be uh, temporarily be out of schools for some reasons. And so when the pandemic was declared, we were ready with these materials. All we needed to do is just to align them with the most essential learning competencies. And so we developed the self-learning modules, which serves as the primary learning resource that's used in the delivery of learning while our learners are on distance learning. So the modular distance learning is implemented in areas where learners do not have the gadgets and internet connection. However, for those learners with radio sets and TV sets and have access to television network and radio stations, then we also offer the educational television. And I'd like to mention that in the Philippines, we have established DepEd TV, the DepEd TV. And so those are the three learning delivery modalities that are implemented for learners without gadgets. I'd like also to mention that our teachers did a lot of contextualization on the modules, not just for our typical learners, but also for our learners with disabilities. And of course, and to support actually our parents as they guide their children while they're learning from home. And of course, for the learners, we have required our teachers to be preparing their weekly home learning plan. So the weekly home learning plan actually contains the expected activities, home learning tasks to be accomplished by the learners day by day with the guidance of the parents. The weekly home learning plan actually comes with the individual monitoring plan, especially for those learners who are struggling, who lag behind. And this is a specific tool used by our teachers and our learning facilitators um, to to monitor how the children are progressing and not actually progressing. For our learners with disabilities, I would also like to mention that our SPED teachers also developed and updated their individualized education plans for our learners with disabilities via different platforms. And I was able to show this already a while back. You will note that we have involved a number of our stakeholders to help actually in delivering learning, to support us in the delivery of learning. So here you see the battle cry actually of the Department of Education for us to keep the Bayanihan spirit alive. That means to say that we all, as much as possible, wanting that our stakeholders should be one with us in making learning happen in this time of pandemic. And so we oriented parents on how is it to be assisting their respective children when they're learning from home. We provided also instructional support to to our learners with disabilities, with the teachers doing some home visitations. We coordinated with community volunteers. There's also home visitation with the consultation with barangay officials for safety protocols. And I'd like to mention that in the Department of Education, we hired learning support aides, and these learning support aides are actually intended. The hiring of these learning support aides are actually intended to help our teachers um, in providing instructional support. And of course, we prioritize provision of learning support aids to learners who cannot manage their own learning, to learners with special needs, to learners who do not have household members or anyone in the home who can provide instructional support and facilitate the learning delivery. And of course, households with parents and guardians who have full-time jobs who may not be able to monitor and guide their children's learning from home. So that it's really important for our parents to report to school that they cannot indeed provide that needed instructional support, so that the school is going to prioritize them for hiring of learning support aids. So you'll see that in the Philippines, it's actually coming together for the sake of the children to make learning happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lila. Okay, we already heard about what the Philippines government have been doing to cope with this problem. Okay, now, Miss Jiang, can you share with us on how you deal with students without gadgets and connectivity in South Korea?
Okay, I'm gonna share our government story, or it can be my story. Okay, the first one about the gadget. The Ministry of Education, of course, in cooperation with the metropolitan and provincial offices of education, lent a total of 316,000 smart devices, which is pretty big because it is almost like the 1/10 of the whole student. So some of them were originally belongs to some of them was held by schools and office of education, and some of them were additionally supplied by the Ministry of Education, and some of them were sponsored by the private sector like Samsung Electronics or LG Electronics, and they lent this one to low income student without any charge, which is good. And the second one is that previously low income student could apply for subsidy for cellular data for educational content such as EBS that I already mentioned on a yearly basis. But these days they don't need it, because at this part I think the cooperation is very important, because the Ministry of Education collaborated with 3 telephone companies like SKT, KT or LG U Plus, to provide free access to educational sites using smartphones or tablets. Furthermore, ITB also offers EBS educational content in real time. I mean, these 3 companies provided new broadcasting channels for viewing educational content, so the student can choose either internet or TV at their convenience. Okay, this is all. Or do I have an extra time?
Yeah, sure.
Then I want to tell you about my own story.
Okay.
Think of a job market. Always the employer say that we need employees, but the employee said that I need a job. And I think it's because they do not know each other is there. And I think it's the same in educational market. There must be someone who has a computer without any use. They don't use it anymore. But there must be someone who needs it very desperately. So I think the teacher must be kind of a platform between them. I mean, we cannot be a platform itself, but at least we cannot tell them where is the platform. So I always try my best I always try my best to open my eyes to notice where is that platform, because of course some of my students are very, they come from a very low income family. This is all.
Okay, thanks, Miss Jiang, for sharing with us. Okay, how about the educators in Malaysia, Puan Fazilatun?
Okay. As you know, when we started the MCO, What we did was we had done some study to gauge how many of our students have devices and whether they have internet connectivity or not. We found out that at that time, 36.9% of our students did not have gadgets. So that's how we plan to have to focus some of them on Delima for online learning, whereas another part of us is to come up with a strategy on having our educational resources on terrestrial TV. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see. Can you see this?
Puan Faz, maybe you
Yeah.
can use the reading mode just besides the
Okay.
slideshow.
All right. Like this?
Yeah, the bottom one besides the slideshow.
Besides
Yeah,
this.
that one.
This one. Okay.
Yeah, reading view.
All right. So for the offline mode, we provide printed materials. As you know, in Malaysia, all students have been given textbooks as a loan. So meaning that all of our students have textbooks in their hands. So the teachers can use the textbooks to guide the students on the concept and also to teach the students. We also have activity books for usually for primary school students, for them to do activities in the books provided. Then the teachers can also use worksheets and also storybooks to further inculcate education to the students. In to help our students with those in the remote areas and also in rural areas, we also get help from the Parent Teachers Association to deliver printed modules to the students. So if you can see from the picture, the teachers lining out, giving modules to the students. And if like in Sabah and Sarawak or in remote areas, the teachers went to to the students' houses to send out printed modules so that no one is left behind. So these are some of the ways that we deal with students without devices and connectivity. And as you know, our Ministry of Education, for us, our main theme during the COVID pandemic is to teach based on the capabilities and also accessibility of the students and also the teachers. If the teachers should know and aware of the socio-economic needs of the students. If the students do not have any devices, so the teacher can plan for lessons without using any gadgets and only use printed materials. So these are some of the things that we do in Malaysia for students without devices and also connectivity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Puan Faz. Okay, now, Mr. Sharizal, how do you deal with students without gadgets and connectivity in Brunei? Mr. Sharizal, over to you. You are on mute. Sorry.
So for Brunei, we recognize that there are equity issues in relation to devices and connectivity. So we felt that we need a whole government approach in terms of supporting students' learning via online. And one of the initiative as a whole nation approach is we have to work with several government and non-government agencies, such as the Authority of Info Communications Industry, or AITI here, with the Ministry of Transport and Info Communication, to initiate a donation drive to support the online learning. To support the online learning and students in need of ICT devices, the public, private sectors, and NGOs are called upon to join efforts in donating new or even used computers, laptops, and tablets to provide equal and continuous learning opportunities to all students. So before the laptops and devices are handed over to students, performance reviews on the device were conducted to ensure that they meet the prescribed minimum specifications, such as doing some diagnostic tests, reformatting if necessary, and installation of necessary application for online learning purposes. So I believe this initiative will carry on from time to time, not only during the pandemic times. And I believe that the success of this donation drive was only achievable through a whole nation approach with the support from all students, parents, ministries, private sectors, and NGOs, and particularly the general public. Uh, to resolve the equity in terms of the internet, so partnership between the ministry and its external stakeholders, particularly our internet service provider, which is UNN here, and the three telecommunication companies, which is Imagine, Progressive, and DST, is continued to be strengthened, whereby the telcos have provided platforms to encourage the engagement from the community or the public to enable students to have remote access to the online learning, especially for those who are in need. Simply by sending SMS, donation of internet data is enabled in monetary form, and converting it to data and SIM cards, which will be eventually provided to students. With Internet Zero Rate initiative by UNN, it has also provided all-time access to ministry identified online learning education application and platforms, as well as websites, for teachers and students to enable remote teaching and access to e-learning solutions. Once the data limit is reached, students and teachers are still provided with sufficient speed to access the education application and platforms. Back to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharizal. Okay, we already heard about the Ministry of Education for each country. The educators for each country have done excellent job to make sure no one left behind. Even the student do not have any gadgets and connectivity at home. Ladies and gentlemen, distance learning is challenging for many, but it can be more challenging for students with learning, attention, or social emotional needs. As educators and parents, we are tasked with an unprecedented challenge, figuring out how to reach and teach diverse learners online. It's not easy, but it's critical for so many of our students. Okay, so for the next question, what is the approach used for supporting a student with a special needs during distance learning? So, as for our first speaker for this question, we move to Miss Jia. Can you share with us?
Okay. I think the first thing we need for them is a manpower, and also our government in in our government carrying connection with additional manpower support and after school activity providers is reinforced. So, for example, to support education activities, 374 special teachers in special classes in elementary school are temporarily hired outside of the quarter. Also, university students who majoring in special education are helping them, especially if it is impossible for them to go to school. The Ministry of Health and Welfare, local government support care in connection with related organizations. And about the content, customized content is being developed. For example, for students with physical and developmental disabilities, AR or VR content is being developed. Also, the studio for content production was being made. Lastly, the problem is that maladjustment behavior has increased during this COVID situations. There was a situations where intervention action support was needed. So behavior intervention support models is being developed and spreaded or taught by special teachers with 5 nationwide base support center. I mean, it sounds wonderful, but still it has a pitfall. This COVID situation different between here because here is a policy, but if the parents of that specialized student do not know about it or do not recognize it, and if the teachers are not kindly enough to let them know, or if the parents of that student also has physical or mental problems, then it has no meaning. Sometimes still they are behind not only their mental or physical abilities, but also they are behind the information. I think that's the biggest challenges. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Ji Yang, for sharing with us today. Next, Puan Fazliatun, can you share with us what we do in Malaysia? Puan Faz, you are on mute.
Okay, in Malaysia, we have a special focus for special needs students. Let me share my slide. Is it better, this one?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because I changed into PDF.
Okay, that's great.
All right. View. Okay. For the special needs students, we have video recordings based on the curriculum, which divided into thematic activities. And also, they also have video recordings on basic level for alphabets and numbers. And also for students who is blind, there are basics in Braille and also sign language video recordings. And other than that, the teachers also printed modules and send the modules to the students' houses for learning modules and also worksheets, which include interactive kits and also vocabulary checklists. And for students who have accelerated in their learning, we also have modules for student enrichment learning framework, which is called SELF, and also guidelines for teachers on how to do the modules with the students. And we also have materials for remedial students, which is under the Malay language literacy module, and also numeracy modules, which are in Malay and also English for the students. So other than that, the teachers can also use videos and also use a lot of props to help students with the remedial classes. And in our Didik TV programs, we also include sign languages so that the students can follow the programs on TV. So these are some of the things that we do to assist our students with special needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Puan Fazliatun, for sharing with us today. And now, We move to Brunei. Okay, Mr. Sharizal, what is the approach used for supporting students with special needs during this distance learning?
Yeah, for Brunei, the special needs has been taken care of a dedicated unit, which is the Department of Special Education. So they took care of the special needs student during the pandemic times. Um, their online learning is very much flexible for special needs students due to the changing moods on routines and other factors. So the approach is on as a one-on-one learning approach, which might require physical interaction via um, Zoom or MS Teams. So technology plays a very important role in terms of engaging special needs students who are at home. So the learning activities according to the students' individual needs. So there's no one size fits all, especially when you're handling with special needs students. And parents are given ample of time for might be for at least a week to submit any work or any output that the students have done to their teacher through various application or platforms such as WhatsApp, simple applications, WhatsApp, emails, and MS Teams. And the students' work will be checked and recorded immediately for via online interactive quiz apps to ensure that the parents are on track with the learning progress of their special needs students. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharizal. Okay, the last panelist for this question. So, Dr. Lila, can you share with us on what is the approach used for supporting students with special needs during distance learning in Philippines? Can you share with us?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Um, for us in the Philippines, we actually implemented the whole community approach in engaging our internal as well as our external stakeholders, even in the development of the basic education learning continuity plan. And I'd like to mention that the Bureau of Learning Delivery, the bureau that I had also developed the learning continuity plan for specific for special education, so that we involve our stakeholders actually even in the harvesting, developing, production, distribution of learning resources, even to training of our teachers, because our teachers really needed a lot of training, particularly on teaching our learners with disabilities, those with special needs, while on distance learning, and also on the utilization of a number of learning resources on the in different accessible formats. And aside, of course, from the teachers being trained, we made it a point that we oriented our parents, our learning facilitators, particularly in the on the provision of instructional support and use of the different learning materials in different accessible formats. And I'd like to mention also, and in fact, I mentioned this earlier, that we also hired learning support aids specific for our learners with special needs, because we know very well that they are the very ones in need of instructional support. So you will note that a while back I mentioned about the menu of learning delivery modalities, of which it responds to whatever is the context of the learner. And it's actually a manifestation that the Department of Education is very much in a situation where learners do not have the same access to devices or internet at home. And so, whether it's going to be high tech, whether it's going to be medium tech or low tech, what is critical is that we're able to deliver learning in an equitable manner. And so I mentioned also a while back that the primary resource that we're using in the Department of Education is the self-learning module. And these self-learning modules are converted into different content and accessible formats to make it appropriate to whatever learning delivery modality that are being implemented or adopted by our learners. And so we have developed the DepEd TV episodes. And in fact, some of our DepEd TV episodes are already embedded with sign language interpretation. And our ICTS unit, the counterpart of the Bureau, particularly on ICT, is actually working on the embedding of sign language interpretation in all our DepEd TV episodes. Our SPED teachers also develop their own video lessons with sign language interpretations. Other than video lessons, our self-learning modules are also being converted to ESLMs. And of course, our teachers are trained on how to convert learning materials, the self-learning modules, into different content and accessible formats, because certainly the DepEd Central Office cannot do all at the same time. So we really needed the assistance of our teachers. And I'd like to mention that the Department of Education is being supported by some external stakeholders like the UNICEF and that of the USAID in the conversion of all these self-learning modules into different content formats. I think it's also important to note that digital devices like laptops, tablets are also procured by the Department of Education, and others are also for procurement, not just intended for our typical learners, but also for our learners with disabilities. And this is also in answer to the previous question as to what do we do with learners without gadgets. And so we are procuring actually tablets and that of laptops as much as possible to cover our learner, to have for our learners. And I'd like to mention also that local government units and stakeholders are also in support to the Department of Education in the provision of devices to all our learners, and that includes our learners with disabilities. And the Department of Education, in fact, I mentioned earlier about all this already, but I'd like to be emphatic that the Department of Education established its own DepEd TV channel. And we have developed DepEd TV episodes. And all these are all from the self-learning modules. So that means to say that the lessons that they have in the TV episodes are practically the same with that of those learners who are in modular learning using the self-learning modules. And these DepEd TV episodes are shown in a number of TV channels, and that includes our own DepEd TV. We have our own DepEd YouTube channel, and we are also showing our DepEd TV episodes already in our DepEd Philippines FB page. So that means to say that we're really providing a lot of opportunities for our learners to be watching these DepEd TV episodes. These DepEd TV episodes, for those who do not have any internet connection, especially for those who are accessing the DepEd YouTube channel and the DepEd Philippines, and of course, those who cannot go on air, particularly because they don't have any access to TV, this DepEd TV episodes are actually converted into MP4 format to benefit those without access to the TV network but have devices at home. So that for those with computers, tablets, and without any internet connection, or those with TV with just a video player, can already benefit from this DepEd TV episodes in MP4 format. And I'd like to mention also that aside from our DepEd TV, we have a number of local government units, schools division offices, and also specific schools that have established their own local TV and that of their own radio stations, and they call it the Radio Escuela. And in addition, the Department of Education also developed its own DepEd learning management system, and we made it sure that accessibility features have been considered to benefit our learners with disabilities. You will note that here we have the DepEd Commons where internet and is not a problem because we actually partnered with a company that sponsors this. So teachers and even learners need not to spend any when they access our DepEd Commons. Our DepEd Commons actually contain a number of our learning resources. And I'd like also to mention that the Department of Education has the DepEd 349 plan, of which our teachers and even non-teaching personnel are provided with SIM cards. And these SIM cards actually can be used for them to be attending, for their attendance to webinars, for them to communicate with learners and that of parents. So these are all our initiatives. And I think I failed to mention about the two-way radio that's also being used by our schools, by our particularly our learners in far-flung areas. So we're really making everything possible. So we have DepEd TV, we have modules for our learners. We have also the radio-based instruction, and we have the two-way radio for our learners. And all these are made possible, available to all our schools. All they need to do is just to ensure access to all this.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lila, for sharing with us. Okay, so I really salute all educators who had done so much to deliver the lesson for special needs students during this pandemic era. Okay, we don't have enough time. I'm sorry to all our panelists. Before I wrap up this session, I want to ask each panelist to give some piece of advice or final notes to the attendees that attend our forum today. So maybe we can start with how about Puan Faz? Okay, Puan Fazliatul first. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Which one? I'd like to show you my last slide. Okay, my last word. The pandemic actually gives us opportunity to accelerate digital education. So as you know that Malaysia has been embarking on smart school and making all schools smart ever since 1999. And until now, we feel that we haven't reached the level that we really wanted. But I believe that the pandemic gives us the opportunity to accelerate this, where right now we have a digital education plan for us to develop students to be digitally fluent and to empower educators to integrate digital technology in the education ecosystem. And then we could enhance our infrastructure and also content. And also we optimize the involvement of strategic partners with us. We already have great giants to be with us. So we hope to achieve more once the pandemic has settled. Thank you.
Okay, thanks Puan Fazliatul for this final piece of advice. Okay, we move to Mr. Sharizal. Okay, can you share a piece of advice or any final notes to the attendees that attend our forum today?
Yeah, as my final note, I would like to share two things to ensure that the experience of the pandemic is going to continue in terms of providing the best opportunities for our students to learn using digital technologies. Um, One of them is to look into the teaching and learning approach, which is very important. Technology is one thing, but if the teachers are not able to deliver the digital learning, is going to go down the drain. So the move to online delivery for the majority of our teaching means that we need to consider how best to support our students' learning, whether they are in school and having a blended learning experience, or whether it's going to be a full-blown digital learning as students are fully digital learners. With students all over the world now are redesigning education because of COVID-19. blended learning is becoming a new normal, and efforts have started here in Brunei to support schools in delivering blended learning. And blended learning classrooms will include a face-to-face instruction while also using technology to provide in-class online learning that students can also do at home, provided they have access to the necessary technology. And efforts are currently going on through what I've explained earlier in terms of closing the digital technology gap. And online instruction is facilitated by the use of online learning platforms or even an LMS where teachers will develop lessons and activities, and students will go through the lesson successfully and completion over a period of time. And the last thing that I did mention earlier was the use of LMS. So in terms of provision of digital tools, the ministry will start to introduce and set up learning management systems for schools as their virtual teaching, learning, and assessment environments. So these three is very important. We need to connect the teaching going on through online and to ensure that there is assessment modules put in place suitable for the online delivery. And so the project is going to be a 5-year plan to integrate several types of learning management systems into our general or core education to supplement and at times complement the teaching, learning, and assessment that occurs in school. And it's important to take note that these systems are not meant to replace the humanistic and active interaction of on-site classroom, but rather enforces and enhances the existing interactions between teachers and students through automating some specific teacher tasks to reduce the workload or to reduce the burden of teachers, which teachers are experiencing now through online learning and engaging learning with a virtual, adaptive, multimodal, and personalized content and learning through the use of artificial intelligence, AI, or data-driven machine learning. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sharizal. And from the perspective view of an educator, so Ms. Jiang, can you share with us your final piece of advice or final note to our attendees for today?
Okay. It can be a little bit out of focus, but I'm going to share my own experience as a teacher. One funny thing is that according to our educational law, teachers are an education expert. But we have a common question, which is doctor is an expert and teacher is an expert. When you go to a doctor, we have to make an appointment and we have to wait for them. But when the parents come to school, they just came to the school without any appointment. And especially during coronavirus time, I feel like I become kindergarten teacher instead of a high school teacher. They want me to check their sons and daughters from early to until the end of the class. They want me to wake their children up on time so that they can participate on real time class. And my strategy is that I'm trying to my best to show that I'm an expert. It does not mean that I'm trying to show myself off, but I just try to be a real expert. Think of the branded crisis about the real time crisis. I use many different applications to get to make them be involved in a class, like a Google-based applications such as Dearpod or Pear Deck. So I can get the response very simultaneously. And my point is that when the teachers do not look like an expert, I'm sorry, but the parents started to ignore us. So I think for the same reason, from several years ago, the teachers what can I say, professional community is very popular. They develop their professionalism together. So I think that's the way the teachers must go. And the final words is that I again thank you so much for inviting me here, because in 1997 I stayed in Malaysia for 2 weeks as a member of Malaysian Korean Youth Exchange program. It was my golden time. Here is the pictures long time ago. So thank you so much inviting me here again. And I appreciate for giving me the chance to reflect my golden times, but at the same time, I could think of our education more thoroughly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Miss Jiang. Okay, and Dr. Lila, can I ask you for a piece of advice or final notes for our attendees that attend our forum today?
Yes, thank you very much once again. Actually, it's our fervent hope that the COVID-19 pandemic will be over soon so that we can already get back to the usual face-to-face teaching learning. I see that there's really no substitute to face-to-face learning. But for now, we really have to content ourselves to the distance learning delivery modalities that we need to implement. But I'd like to mention that the direction of the Department of Education for now, while the children are on distance learning, is to, as much as possible, transition to the use of blended distance learning so that we can reduce our reliance to the use of modular print, for us to be more environment friendly and get into maximizing the use of our depth ed TV and radio based instruction, and also our online distance learning. I know very well that for online distance learning, it's going to happen soon, and we'll be able to at least reduce the number of learners just using the modular print because of the devices that are being procured and are being donated by our partners. And for now, I'd like to mention that we are preparing for a pilot study on limited face-to-face, and so the blended learning is going to be implemented for these 59 schools. And we're looking forward that the pilot is going to be successful and that we'll be able to expand this to more schools in low risk and moderate risk areas. As mentioned by the other speakers, we're also wanting that our DepEd LMS, our learning management system, will also be maximized by our learners. And I mentioned also that the our DepEd LMS, or learning management system, also responds to the requirements of our learners with disabilities, particularly noting accessibility features. And so I say thank you very much for this engaging experience of learning together, which gave me personally a lot of insights on what more and how much more, uh, and how much better can we deliver learning in this time of pandemic with no single child left behind. And I'd like to say thank you to my fellow panelists for everything that you have shared. So we'll continue to create ripples of hope that accessible, inclusive, and quality education is not really far from reach as envisioned by our own Sulong Edukalidad. And let me say, may we all be carriers of that virus of generosity and love, infecting our learners with all our teachers and with all our education stakeholders as carriers of that virus until such time that a culture of making learning happen, even the children are learning from home, is going to happen not just in school, not just in the respective homes of our learners, but also in the whole community. And I believe um, we can do this all together in the spirit of shared responsibility. In the Philippines, we join our beloved Secretary, Professor Emeritus Leonor Magtolis Briones, in her call to face the challenges of the new normal with the virtues of the old normal: courage, faith, adventure, and discovery. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Lila, for your piece of advice or final notes to our attendees for today. So we come to an end to our forum for today. I want to special thank to our four panelists for today, which is Puan Fazliatun from Malaysia, Mr. Shahrizal Imran from Brunei, Miss Ji Yang from South Korea, and the last but not least, Dr. Lila from Philippines. So, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, it is clear that this pandemic has utterly disrupted an education system that many assets was already losing its relevance. Could the move to online learning be the catalyst to create a new, more effective method of educating students? While some worry that the hasty nature of the transition online may have hindered this goal, other plans to make e-learning parts of their new normal after experiencing the benefits firsthand. While we have yet to see whether this will apply to e-learning post-COVID-19, it is one of the few sectors where investment has not dried up. What has been made clear through this pandemic is that the importance of disseminating knowledge across borders, companies, and all parts of society. If digitalization of education can play a role here, it is incumbent upon all of us to explore its full potential. Okay, that's all from us for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your attention. Thanks for coming in from Brunei, from Philippines, and also from the South Korea. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very
Maraming
much.
salamat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fazli Ishan.
Terima kasih.
Thank you very much to all the panelists for great insights into what's happening in your country and also in Malaysia precisely and effectively. All right, without further ado, we're going to move to the next session, which is the presentation of our second keynote by a a person who doesn't need much introduction in Japan. And please stay tuned. Please stay tuned. I know a hungry man is always an angry man. I know. It's already 12 o'clock. I know it's already 12 o'clock. I know, stomach grumbling, coffee looking at you and you looking at coffee. And you know what? I have bananas. I have bananas. Well, that's keeping me, that has been keeping me, well, alive, I guess, since morning. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for a fantastic insight. Thank you, Dr. Fazliatul, Mr. Shariel, and everyone, Madam Kim, and also Ariola from all the way from Philippines. Thank you so much, Mr. Fazli. So please stay tuned for our second session, which is a presentation by our second keynote address. And for these, the moderator will be nonetheless Dr. Kamaria, or fondly known as Dr. Q. All right? A person who's not alien to IMEC. All right? Dr. Q. Thank you very much, everybody.